So I see most of them from this group are from SAP, or probably I heard one like from Oracle. So ultimately, whether it's a SAP or Oracle, so these are the like your ERP applications, right? So you might already have some idea about SAP. So I'm not going much into what is a SAP, how it evolved and all that stuff, unless if anyone interested. Otherwise, you all know about SAP. Especially it basically provides applications to for different industries in the market in the world, right? So the list is endless, and from SAP side, the type of applications that they actually provide to different industries. So you can see a quick kind of history and how it got evolved. Okay, so and I think whoever is there working on SAP, so most of them are definitely heard about this master data governance. And so these days, why, I mean, earlier SAP is not kind of mandatory earlier, but the last at least from 4 to 5 years onwards, we keep on hearing SAP MDG, right? Master Data Governance. So why this MDG suddenly like kind of becoming more famous or kind of thing, right? So basically what happened is earlier in any organization, we actually create master data, whether it's Oracle or SAP. So master data we create, right? So examples for master data is like your material master, else probably customer masters, business partners, or vendors, suppliers, or when it comes to finance, you have cost centers, profit centers, GL accounts, company codes. Okay, in a retail space, if you're talking about article master, and in plant maintenance space, if you talk about equipments, functional locations, bombs. So there are different master data which will be used across all your applications, whether it's a SD sales and distribution side, or it's on material management side, or non-procurement side. So you basically use this master data. Okay, so now in SAP world, earlier all these master data directly created in the system, in SAP system, like SAP provided the respective SAP screens and everything, where you directly create the master data. Okay, so now during that MDG is a kind of optional. Okay, so once MDG started, SAP introduced MDG to the world. So that time initially it was optional. Whether you use it MDG or you directly create the master data without MDG, it's a kind of optional thing. Okay, so now later what happened is SAP basically now made mandatory that all the master data has to be created, okay, through MDG only, through master data governance only. So master data governance is a kind of solution or kind of another add-on package, just like how you have in the market like SAP SD, MM, and different type of modules, right? So in SAP, if you take SAP side, so we have different modules like SD, MM, okay, let's say PM, or else finance related, CRM, okay, and you have SRM. So like SAP offers many modules. So depends on the industry, that requirements, they'll basically implement the respective components into their SAP systems, right? So similarly, MDG also master data governance. Okay, so this is also another add-on component that comes with SAP. And now it's up to you. I mean, basically you can install this MDG component in the same system, and then you can actually all your master data you can start creating through MDG processes. Okay, so now the only thing is that all the master data, so whatever the master data we are talking about, different masters, material masters, okay, customer masters, then suppliers, okay, then we have something called business partners, then cost center, profit center, GL account. So all these are some of the examples for the master data. Okay, so now all this master data basically cutting across all these modules. So when I create a material, the material I'll be using in for my sales process, for my purchasing process, in my plans. So likewise, you use this master data in across all these modules, right? So basically, you'll now SAP, what SAP has done is earlier there is no governance solution. Okay, so you directly create the master data in any SAP system and then start using in your respective applications. But now SAP made mandatory that we should use MDG for any master data creation. All the master data has to be created through governance solution. So that governance solution can be anything, like, I mean, can be like SAP comes up with MDG is the SAP solution, but in the market, there are other solutions are also there. That one example is MDM, Master Data Management. So this is also actually not an SAP product, but SAP acquired this particular product MDM solutions. And then they actually, this is not based on your SAP solution. Okay, so it's altogether the backend technology is also not ABAP or something, right? It uses completely some other technology. But what SAP has done is SAP acquired this MDM solution, which is famous earlier for any master data solutions, and then they actually whatever the features that are there as part of MDM, then they actually implemented that all the solutions in SAP version, that is a MDG. Okay, so now MDG is actually uses all your SAP features, the underlying all these modules configuration and everything that we will discuss in going forward. Okay. So now what happened is wherever you see, you are already aware of that all the most of the big customers are transitioning from their ECC version to S4 version. Okay. So SAP also provided some deadlines. We don't know what will happen, but they provided some deadlines that most of the customer has to transform into their S4 journey, right? From your ECC version. So as part of this one, whoever actually the customers, they are already started upgrading. Some of the customers are already upgraded, right? So in that journey, so MDG also they are adding as a master data governance solution for any master data creation or a change process. Okay, so that's where you see here, because of this one, because of these all these implementations, there are basically so many MDG jobs are also opened up in the market. Okay, it's a quick why how the outlook look like for the MDG thing, but we'll discuss more into the coming session in the coming slides. Okay, so these are some salary trend, how it look like SAP MDG one. Okay, so these are the different examples, some of the examples that SAP there in different industries that SAP basically is being used. Okay, so we'll go through all this. Okay, now coming to what is SAP MDG. Okay, so MDG is a master data governance solution. So basically, as I mentioned, let's take, for example, this is your existing one SAP system. Okay, so in any SAP system, we discussed about something called master data, right? So master data examples for master data: material masters, business partners, customers, and vendors, and we have so on and so forth. Okay, so what happens is in any, if you are installed the ERP component on any SAP system. Okay, so SAP provided respect to UI applications where you can actually create the master data. So user will log in into the respective applications and user can create the master data. So like there's a dedicated applications are there to create your master data. For example, for material master, SAP provided some UI applications, and for business partners, for customer masters, so they provided some respective UI applications. This is without a MDG. Okay, so user will log into the system, they create the master data, and the master data gets saved into your backend of the DB layer. Okay, so now in this process, what happens is whoever is actually having authorization to the respective that UI applications, they can log in and they can create. So in this process, what happens is the person who is having access to this particular application, he can log in and he can create the master data. Okay, so with this one, there is no, in this one, we are not basically governing the data. So governing in the sense when someone is creating the data, it has to be validated through either through systematically or by other people. Okay, so when it is getting governed, the master data, so ultimately the data that will reach to the data that we create in our system. So we can say that is your golden record. Okay, if you set up a proper governance process for your master data creation or change process, then the data that created through this particular process, that we can consider it as my golden record because it is reviewed by the experts in my organization, right? So in that, when you set up such kind of governance process, what happens is whatever the data that you have in your system, that is your good records. Okay, so in earlier this is not the case. So that's where you see, because of some lack of knowledge or because lack of visibility, so different people in the system, they will create the same material, they can create multiple times with their requirements, and you will see a lot of duplicates in the system. Okay, or sometimes someone is creating a customer, so there might enter some address, and the same customer will be created by some other person and he will enter some different address. Okay, so that the number, the address data, the data is also not accurate. So with that one, what happens during your delivery process or any other of the transactional processes, it will have an impact. Ultimately, it leads to some customer great experience interacting with doing the business with that particular organization. So it leads to multiple things when it comes to the master. If the master data setup process is not governed, it will lead to multiple issues, right? So that's where actually MDG, SAP introduced this MDG. So as part of this MDG, it's not like earlier how you create the master data. You set up a governance process for, okay, I'm creating all my finished products has to follow this process. Okay. And for all the raw materials creation process or change process should be done by only the authorized people. And this is what the review process I wanted to have. These checks has to be done when I'm creating this particular master data in my system. Okay. So you define the process, the how your master data creation or change process should look like. You define the process, and that process you set up and provide the relevant authorizations to the relevant users. So then it will go through that particular process, and in future also you will have some whenever there is some audit happens, or if someone wants to look at the history of this particular master data change process, who did what changes, so everything will be actually captured. Okay, so that's where actually SAP come up with this kind of master data solution, where it controls your master data creation change process, and it will distribute the data to the respective transactional systems. Okay, so this is a high level introduction of MDG. Okay, so now coming back to what MDG offers. Okay, the first one is the governance process. Okay, these are the some of the key features that comes along with your master data governance. So first one is the governance. So it enables the governance process, and it provides a transparency, right? So let's say, for example, in a typical MDG, the way of how we create the master data. Okay, so there will be a user. So he will open some MDG UI application. Okay, he will log into the system. He will enter the data, whatever the data that he want to for creation of a material. So he can actually create the master data, what he is supposed to create. So that we will control through the authorizations. Assume that we consider this role as a requester role. Requester is the person who actually initiates a master data creation or change process. Once he enter all the data, and once he submit that request, it will go through some workflow process. The workflow process is something like, it will go to, let's say, for example, plant level approvers. Okay, so plant level approver. And this particular person will open the same request, and he will see, or he will further enrich the plant related attribution for this particular same material. Okay, and then once he completes his process, then once he submit this request, it will go to the finance team. Okay, and finance team will again open the same request. They will further review the data, and if required, they further enrich this particular master data with the finance related attributes, right? And then after that, it goes to, let's say, for example, some sales team, and sales team will review whatever that sales organizations, some sales related attributes for the same material. And finally, once everyone approves, let's say, for example, there will be some super user, we call him as the steward. Okay, the kind of role steward in MDG terminology, and steward will review the data, and he is the final kind of approver. And once he approves, then only your master data creates in the system. Either the creation or updation process gets completed. Okay, in between, in this entire process, anyone can actually reject this particular request or request for a role withdraw kind of process. Okay, so we don't want it to go with this material or this master data. It's already existing in my system. Okay, so now in that case, we wanted to halt this process, and we wanted to just simply roll back or cancel this process, right? So at any point of time, you can revert back that your process. Okay, so this is a typical workflow of an MDG. So it depends on your requirements. You can go with one level review process, or 2-level review process, or 3-level review process, or parallel review process, or you can go for auto approval process as well. So it depends on, because not all the master data follow one approach, right? The creation or change process depends on your, let's say I'm creating a customer. For all one-time customers, I wanted to follow this process. For all regular customers, I wanted to follow a different process, right? So likewise, depends on your needs, your requirements. So you can actually set up the process, how your master data creation or change look like. Okay. Now, if you look at this entire process, okay, here it's not one single person who is creating the responsible for this master data creation or change process. We are involving at respective levels. We are involving the experts in those areas. That means it's a collaborative effort, not by one person. Okay, if one person, he can create a mistake, but there are other people are also there in the process who will review and approve or provide their acceptance. Then only the creation or change process gets completed, right? So this way we can ensure that whatever the master data coming through, this entire thing we call it as my governance. So this is the one example for my governance process, right? So what are the master data coming out of this particular process, that I will assume that this is a good record for me. Okay. So earlier, before that, you don't have these kind of processes in an SAP. In SAP, I can directly log into the system and I can actually create a material without any process, right? Now with introduction of MDG, we have this kind of MDG provides this kind of flexibility. So these kind of workflows we can configure in MDG. Okay, if at all I wanted to, this is my SAP system. I wanted to create a material. Before MDG, I usually go for, I access this transaction code MM01 for material creation. Then I'll go to the system. I'll choose whatever that, okay, I wanted to create this particular material. Okay. And then I'll just log in. I choose what views I wanted to maintain for my material. Okay. I'll enter some description, some bare minimum, the attributes. Okay. And you can just simply just click on save button. This will create a material in my system, right? So now this is without MDG. This is how you people usually create the master data in SAP system, right? Now with introduction of MDG, through MDG process, we set up all these kind of, enable all these kind of governance processes, and we provide the respective applications to access this data, and the user will see the data, whatever he is supposed to see. Maybe some customers, some business users are not supposed to see the bank information of a customer. So you can hide that information for that particular roles. So likewise, based on the role, you can actually provide what information you wanted to display to that particular user. Okay. So all those kind of things are part of your governance. These are the out-of-box features that SAP provided. Whatever the workflow I just provided a simple example, that is a typical MDG workflow, how it look like. And we can configure in the system all these workflows without writing single line of code. Of course, sometimes to handle some of the customer requirements, we need some help from the technical team, but most of the cases you can handle the requirements using through configurations. No need to write the code. Okay. So there is some portion where team support is required, but most of the part, like 70 to 80%, I would say, you can handle through the configurations. So we will discuss in detail those things. So the first feature that we discussed is the governance process, how it look like at very high level. But that are this governance process actually talks about many things. I just explained one simple example of a workflow, but we have, based on the roles, how the what objects that this person supposed to create. Based on the roles, you can control what information you wanted to show, and some validations you wanted to skip at some level and you wanted to run those validations. And there are some systematic checks are also there, and systematic derivation system automatically derives some attributes. All those things you can configure without writing codes. Okay. So those are the high level features of governance capability. Now coming back to the next feature is a consistency. Okay. So consistency is nothing but in this group, we see some people are working on WM. So they mostly deal with the materials, okay, posting the goods, or probably this kind of thing. Basically, it is somewhat related to material masters. Okay. Of course, they also deal with the kind of financial related profit centers or GL accounts, those details as well. Okay. Some people will be from sales and distribution side. They mainly deal with the materials and customers. Some people will be from material management side or procurement side. They deal with materials and the vendors. And a few people are from FI background. They basically work on FI related processes. So that means you have different master data, which is mainly used in your respective areas, right? But when it comes to MDG, so the way how you create your master data, okay, whether it's a material or business partner, customer, vendor, okay. So all the configurations, whatever we are going to learn in MDG, all are actually, if you all are like follow a consistent approach. Consistent approach means basically, if you look at this particular simple workflow I explained for material master, the same you can also apply the same configurations for your business partners or customers or vendors or finance related objects as well. Okay. We are not 80 to 90% of the configurations that we follow in MDG. That same concept will be applied for any object. I can take example of customer and explain the concept. Okay. But the same concept you can apply for material master or for business partners or for finance objects. The workflows, the UI developments or UI configurations, or role-based related configurations, the validations or derivations or data quality checks. everything actually it follow consistent approach. If you know how to do this feature, then the same you can apply for all the objects. So that's where it follows a consistent approach. Your UI applications, your workflows, and the way how you perform the mass operations, the configurations, everything is same for all the objects. You don't need to learn separately for a material master. Okay, this is what for material master only, and for business partner you need to follow some other thing. So it's the same approach. The UI's look and feel is same. The configurations also same configurations. Just your backend master data might be different. It can be material or business partner or something else. Okay, so that is about the consistency. Okay, so we'll see going forward. Next, consolidation. So consolidation is most recently SAP started introduced. Initially in MDG, basically we talk about three components. Okay, one is MDG. This is nothing but master data governance. That means when you are creating your master data or changing the master data, how the process should look like. Okay, that means that this actually covered in your MDG. Okay, similarly you also have something called MDC. Okay, so this is also another component. This particular MDC, nothing but it talks about consolidation. Consolidation means, so basically when your organization acquired some other organization, okay, so then you have data you need to load into, you need to consolidate and load the data into your system. Okay, so the data might be coming from multiple source systems. Okay, so now you need to actually collate all the data, put the data, load the data into your system. Okay, now in this process there might be either you will load the data into your system, or you wanted to do some consolidation and you wanted to load only the best records. Best record means, let's say the same record exists in two systems. So if you take example of, this is your SAP system. Okay, so you have multiple, this is a source 1 and you have another source 2 and there is another source 3. Okay, so in your organization the master data comes from all these different source systems. Okay, so sometimes the master data gets created in the same SAP system, sometimes the data gets created in a respective source systems. It can be because of acquisitions or because of probably the geographical limitations where the data has to be created in those systems, or maybe because of the old legacy process, the data gets created in the respective system. So whatever may be the reason, but ultimately once the data got created in the respective source systems, when you're loading the data into SAP system, usually what happens in any SAP or any system, we do the kind of data cleansing activity, right? So we don't load as is. We do some processing and we try to identify some bad records, and we basically consolidate the data. Consolidated the data means, let's say there is a customer, the same customer also exists. Take an example of some, let's say Amazon. So Amazon customer account is already there in the source system. And again, in this particular system also you have the same Amazon. So here the customer number will be 100. Here the same Amazon customer number will be 200. Now when you are loading the data into the system, it gives a flexibility. You wanted to take a decision. I wanted to club these two records into a single record in my system, or I wanted to load both the records and I wanted to show it as a two separate records. So those kind of provision, it analyzes the data that is coming from multiple sources, and actually this particular consolidation topic. So once you activate the consolidation related functionality in MDG system, in your system, so basically this consolidation provides the flexibility to load the data from multiple sources into one system. And in this particular process, I wanted to identify the duplicate records, or I wanted to find a best record from these multiple matching records, or I wanted to run some validations and correct the data if there are any issues are there. So all such kind of that the cleansing activity can be done by this particular topic. Okay, consolidation. So consolidation comes up with some features, and SAP provided some applications, Fury applications, where you can actually do the configuration and perform the respective activities. So that also we will discuss in this particular course, consolidation. Okay. Now the integration. So integration means basically what happens is, if you look at the same system, this architecture, your SAP system is integrating with multiple source systems because it has to receive the data. At the same time, once the data got created in my SAP MDG system, I wanted to replicate this particular data to all my transactional systems. So these are my transactional systems. It can be either SAP system or it can be some SAP system. Okay, or it can be, let's say, some file-based system as well. So the target system can be anything. Okay, so your master data you are using considering this SAP system as your MDG system, where you create the master data and then you wanted to distribute this data to the respective target systems. So when it comes to the distribution or when it comes to the source, ultimately your SAP MDG system should have a provision where it can connect to all type of systems, right? So that's where this integration comes into picture. So SAP MDG system is capable to connect to any SAP or non-SAP systems for receiving the data or for distributing the data. It uses some of the SAP existing technologies to integrate these systems. Okay, so that we will discuss as part of, we have one topic there we will be discussing about how to integrate. Okay, now the next feature is flexibility. Okay, so this flexibility is basically, if you look at, we discussed some of the key master data in any organization or in any type of ERP applications, like material masters, then business partner plus customer master plus supplier master. Okay, we'll also have in finance area, we have something called cost center, profit center, and then GL account. Okay, and we have something called company code. So these are the some of the element master data in finance area. Similarly, in retail space, SAP has something called IS retail module. Okay, if you enable IS retail module add-on component in any SAP system, there we talk about master data, something called article. Okay, so this we will consider it as a master data. It is to somewhat similar to your material master only, but it will have the features of your retail features. Okay, your plain material master doesn't have this IS retail related attribution, but when you are considering this as an art in IS retail space, we create similar to a material only, but it's a different transaction, MM41 or some different transaction is there, but it has some additional attribution. So this is also one of the master data. And especially again another one in plant maintenance module. In SAP PM module, we have master data like equipment, functional location, bill of materials, BOMs, and task list. And then after that, we have something called object link, object network. So there are a bunch of master data are also available in PM module. Okay. So now all this we consider it as a out of box master data. That means SAP already provided solutions for all these master data. Okay. So when you enable activate MDG in your SAP system, okay, and the respective functionalities you can activate, and it's a kind of plug and play. You can activate the functionality, start using your UI. There are SAP provided UI applications for your respective objects for all these master data, and the backend tables, everything is already available. Just do a little bit of configuration, start using in your business. Okay, so these are the out of box objects. Okay, but now apart from this one, these are most commonly used in different areas. But apart from this, let's say for example, employee master. Okay, some organizations, employee master, they consider it as a master data, and they wanted to the creation of your employee master, updation of employee master. We wanted to basically govern this process. Okay, so now,
hey, you know, ZaranTech now offers SAP corporate training. That's right. Train your workforce in SAP with our comprehensive program. We offer customized courses, certified trainers, and hands-on labs for both individuals and businesses. Our standout features: bespoke training, fully configured servers for practice, in-house materials, and a dedicated LMS. Plus, get session recordings and 24/7 support. From functional to technical modules, we have got it all. Choose ZaranTech for SAP training and watch your team excel. Learn, upskill, succeed with ZaranTech.
MDG as a standard, it doesn't offer as a out of box, but your MDG solution supports, we consider this as a custom object. Custom object in MDG terminology, whatever is supported by MDG, standard MDG, that we consider it as an out of box objects, and whatever it doesn't cover as part of the standard, that we can consider it as a custom object. And you can build you can bring this object into your MDG space. That means you can build the UI applications, you can build the backend workflows, you can build the required tables or configurations, everything you can do it for this custom object. Okay, it can be employee master, or it can be plant master, or it can be sales organization. So whatever you feel, Okay, this I wanted to consider it as my master data. Then those objects also, you can enable MDG features for those objects as well. So your MDG framework supports creation of this kind of custom objects as well. That's what this flexibility talk about. Okay, so it's open to extend the standard models. You can basically extend the standard models. Standard models means you have already material master BP and all these are the out of box objects. And if you can enhance the standard objects, or you can actually create your own master data as well. Okay, so that is what the MDG framework has, that flexibility and supports extending the standard modules as well as creating your own custom masters also in MDG, that also supports. Okay, then coming back to the data quality. Okay, so in data quality we are talking about here, just going back to this one. So MDG is like a governance solution which governs your master data creation and change process. And consolidation basically enables to load the data from multiple sources into, and after that there is one more module is there within MDG that we call it as a data quality management. Data quality management. Okay, so this data quality management, the purpose of this data quality management is how to measure your master data. Okay, measurement means, so we enabled MDG. Okay, now we all our master data getting created through MDG process. Okay, so that means we assume that my master data that I have in my MDG in my system is 100% compliant and it is aligned with my business processes. What are the rules that I set up? So it has passed through all these rules. Okay, fine. Now, how do you measure your data is 100% good, right? There might be some bad records also there. That could be because there is some loopholes in the way that you set up your governance process. So through that loop, because of that loopholes or because of those gaps, some of your master data is not following your governance principles that you set up. Okay, so that you will get to know only when you run your data quality processes. Okay, which means in my database I have 10 millions of records today. All my 10 millions, out of 10 millions, maybe 5 million records got created through MDG process, and remaining 5 millions of records are loaded into the system before MDG. Okay, so now out of 10 million, 5 million are created through MDG and 5 million records are probably not through MDG, but this is my existing data. Okay, so now when you set up your business rules and run through these rules on your 10 millions of records, okay, one of the rule, let's say for example, to create your material master, these 15 attributes are mandatory. Okay, so this is what the business says. But when you run through you create one rule. Okay, take every record and each record, for each record those 15 attributes should be filled. Okay, so maybe in my master, when I run that rule on my existing master data, maybe 7 millions of records are having all these 15 attributes are correct, and maybe for some million of records are not correct. Okay, that means these attributes are missing for those. So those kind of things on the existing database, you set up your important rules, you configure those rules and run through all your master data through that particular rules. So when you run through the rules for each of these records, then you will get to know whether all your 10 million records are passed successfully through those rules, or maybe are there any records which are failed for these rules, so that you can detect those kind of errors, those kind of records, faulty records, and take corrective action. Okay, so that is how your data measurement should look like. That means when I run my DQM process means I will set up, let's say for example, 100 rules. I configure 100 rules as part of my DQM, and I will apply all these rules to my master data, 10 million of records. Then it go through all these records and it give you some result that you can measure. Okay, so measure in the sense, when I run this rule, I got probably 70%. Okay, that means 70% of the records are passed. Okay, so then I will identify the remaining 30 records. I'll take corrective action. Then when I run this DQM process again after a month, right, then it should be in a progressive way. That means next time when you run, you should be able to see 80% or 90%, because you took some action. And some of the records are exception cases. You cannot do anything for those records. So that's why you have that remaining 10% or 20%, right? So you need to, this DQM is not like data quality one-time kind of thing. You can set up your rules in the DQM and run it as a regular means, maybe monthly once or 2 months once. Okay, and you can see how your data quality look like. right? So it should go in a positive, progressive way. That means 70%, 80%, 90%. It should not go down. Okay. So that's how you can measure how your data quality is, whether your data quality is good or not. So for that one, SAP actually provided with this kind of DQM. So this is towards similar to, if you heard about information steward. Earlier, there is something called third-party tool is there, information steward, which we most of the organization. It's not an SAP thing, but I say information steward tool also can be integrated with SAP, and you create all your roles, business roles in information steward, and start running your these rules on your existing master data. It doesn't change any master data. It just simply go through that touch record should go through these rules, and it will give you the outcome of that particular process is how many of them are passed and how many of them failed. That we are more interested on the failed ones. Why this record got failed? What rule it failed? Right? Okay. So now you can see why it got failed, because is there any someone modified manually this record? That's why this got failed. So you can identify those gaps and address those issues, right? So now, but this is not an kind of SAP one. So what happens is whatever the rules that you have in your MDG, maybe while creating your master data, changing the master data, you need to again do that same kind of configure, same kind of rules here as well. Okay, so it's a double effort. But now what SAP thought is, why we need to do that again, configure those rules, same rules in information steward. Let's have your DQM component. So SAP come up with this DQM component, which is actually similar to this information steward only. But here what happens is it uses your MDG rules to run through these rules, or what are the rules that you additional rules you create in DQM, that also you can actually get it executed during MDG, because all these are SAP components only. Your MDG, MDC, DQM, all these are tightly integrated. Okay, you can use your DQM rules in your consolidation process while loading the data, or MDG while creating your master data, changing the master data. You can use your DQM rules. Okay, so we will also learn about DQM. So that is from the DQM point of view. Okay, but also the other within MDG also you have, when you are configuring, setting up your governance processes, we can, there is something called duplicate check. Duplicate check means basically when someone is creating a master data in MDG, it should first validate with this similar kind of attribution, is there any records exist in my system or not, right? So as soon as you enter some data in the system, it automatically in the backend, it will go and query any similar matching records. If the record exists, it will come and show as like, hey, you are creating this customer, but with this customer details, already these many customers are existing in the system. It will show up in the pop-up. Now it's up to the business user whether he wanted to go with the existing customer and terminate this creation process, or he wanted to ignore that message and still go ahead and create a customer. Because of maybe some geographic reasons, he wanted to have set up the customer with a specific country. Okay, but there should be a systematic check where it should run in the backend and propose me that these are the duplicate records. If any duplicate records are there, it should detect that one. That is from the data quality aspect. Okay, and other features in data quality is basically the way how you create your rule set. In earlier, before MDG, SAP provided some baddies where the user has to write ABAP code to have some checks. But now in MDG, what SAP has done is still those ABAP style of writing the checks is there. On top of that one, to make that more flexible for the MDG functional consultant, they provided some UI configuration. So in the UI itself, you can configure how your rule should look like. Okay, so there is no need to write any logic. So it will guide it will be a kind of guided kind of a way where you can choose your rule, how the rule look like, okay, on the UI. And once you activate that rule in the backend, it generates the required ABAP content. Okay, so you don't need to learn ABAP to write your rules. Those rules are like from simple complexity to medium complexity. There are some, might be some complex rules will be there for which you need some ABAP logic. So those kind of thing will be taken care by the MDG technical people. Okay, so if you have a simple or easy way to configure your rules, the checks, and also the derivations in the sense, I'm creating one material. So when I'm creating a material, so ideally for all the finished products, so the material should get extended to some 20 plants, right? So when you are creating a material, it should actually extend to 20 plants. So there are two ways. One is user can go and manually add those plant list for while creating your material. which is time consuming and not a good user experience. And also there is a chance scope for the where user can make a mistake. By mistake, he will add wrong plans or he will not maintain 20. So that will lead to some data inconsistency. But if this is the process all the time, then you can set up a rule in the backend. Okay, when you set up a rule, as soon as you select okay finished product, it automatically add all those plans for you. So that is what we call it as a derivations, right? So through derivations, what happens is as soon as I select a finished product, what are the properties, the common properties that should have for this finished product, those should automatically get derived. Okay, so in that one will be like a best user experience where user no need to enter all the data. The second one is there is no scope for making mistakes because all these derivations are happening through the system and system will always do correctly mostly. Okay, and the third one is it saves a lot of time, right? So these kind of benefits are also there. All these things comes under as part of the data quality. In MDG also, when you are configuring the processes workflows, so during that time you can configure all these checks or the derivations or duplicate check, all these things you can configure in the backend, right? So that is also another some of the key features within data quality. Okay, so I just give a pause, and if you have any questions so far, I can take some questions.
Actually, the as an MDG consultant, is it from a roles and responsibilities perspective? Are we supposed to come up with these rules, or will there be? We are implementing it. We are creating the rules, validations, and all that.
Yeah.
Is it our role also to? Because I just know PLM. I don't know FI or some other thing.
Yeah.
They will give us some specification, right?
Yeah. So what happens is in MDG, okay, so we will have two type of roles. One is MDG technical. Okay, technical in the sense these are mainly ABAPers. Okay, so ABAPers are there. So who will be actually learning this MDG? That means their main scope is just whatever that some technical like extending some adding some ABAP logic to define some complex rules, or is probably writing some custom code to handle some of the requirements. Okay, so that's why the ABAPers will come into picture. Okay, the other one will be MDG functional. Okay, so functional, in the functional also, again we can have two type of, one is the core MDG functional. Okay, and the other one is these people are already working on SD consultants, acts as SD consultant or PM consultant or MM consultant or FI consultant. Okay, so they're already aware of the transaction side processes, right? How what is the configurations related to your sales orders or goods issue processes, and also they know the customer master and vendor master or material master, how to set up the material types or customer account groups, and they're already aware of from the ERP standpoint, not from the MDG standpoint, right? So they have already the master data creation and the transactional side of thing also. But what they don't know is what is MDG. In MDG, how do I create? I know how to configure this 01 screen and do that one, the functionals, SDRMM functionals. But this is not the UI that we use in MDG, right? We use some other MDG UI applications. How to configure those applications, how to enable those applications, how to build the workflow. So the MDG side of the story, they are not aware of that one, right? So for this core MDG functional or for this SD functional, basically they will mainly focus on the how the governance process should look like. So one example, I explained the simple workflow and some validations or some derivations, right? So some of the most of the rules are your business rules and everything comes from the business side. Business will provide you the rules to you. Okay, if it is a kind of greenfield implementation, you can work with the business or get that business rules from the business people. Okay, so when I say business rules, all these validations or derivations and all these things, what are the checks that you wanted to go through during your master data creation or change process? Okay, what type of roles are there in your organization? Who will do what activity? So all those things, basically we need to get the details from the business users. Okay, so this is in case of greenfield implementation. When it comes to kind of a brownfield implementation, that means when I say brownfield implementation means, let's say for example, this is your SAP system. Okay, in this SAP system, you already have your ERP solution. Okay, ERP solution. Okay, so that means in this ERP solution, the customers are already using these kind of transaction codes for your master data creation. Okay, like M01 or BPT code or else let's say XD01. So SAP, you are not the MDG side of application, ERP side of application. So this is an existing system. Users are already creating the master data. Okay. So during this creation process also, there is some already the SPRO configurations and everything is already set up over here. Some checks in some baddies and everything is configured. Now in this case, when customer wants to migrate from ECC version, this is a ECC version, ECC version to S4 version, what happens is business says that, hey, already everything is there in my ECC system. Okay, now you go and check how the material creation, what checks are there, everything you go and check, and accordingly you just do the same kind of thing through MDG process. So this is your MDG. So when you activate MDG, so now what happens, this is your already existing ERP will be their layer. On top of that one, you will have your MDG layer also there. Okay. Now, whatever the checks that you have in this one, you just bring this into MDG space that you go and validate, right? So in that case, you need some knowledge or some understanding what type of materials that are getting created and also what type of customers are getting created. So during these processes, what checks are there, so that we have to go and study that and prepare one document and come up with these rules. Now take these rules to business and these are the checks that are there. Are you expecting any more checks? Okay. Or this is the complete list. So those kind of agreement and alignment has to be done from the business and the MDG consultant, right? So this is from the existing point of view. But what is new, what is not there in ERP and what you supposed to work with business newly, that is your workflow processes. Okay. So workflow process means basically that is not there in here. This one somehow identify and prepare a list. But when it comes to the workflow process, how your master data creation process should look like. It should go for any approval process or it should go for auto approval process, two-step approval or auto approval. And what is your target systems to replicate the data? So what are the mass processes that you are going to run? So all those, the capabilities of MD, they are not aware because duplicate check is something not there in the system. Customer may or may not know about the duplicate check. Then you need to work with the customer. Hey, there is a feature in MDG. If at all you wanted to notify, detect any duplicates are there. So this is the feature. Now you tell me how to identify duplicates. What is the criteria for duplicate? So some people will go for, while creating the customer or vendor, address is a criteria to identify duplicates. And some business, they say bank data is my duplicate criteria. And some people will say maybe tax data. So likewise, different customers will have different type of requirements, right? So that we need to work with business and get that those kind of requirements out of the business people, right? So all those things we can work with business only when you are aware of what is MDG offers to you. So what are the features that are there in MDG? Then you can actually try to work with the customer and get that one. So that is a lengthy answer I have given. But to short, what happens is if business is already aware of and all those things are document, you are lucky, you can get that date, take that requirements and just simply implement. If that kind of document is not there, then probably we have to work that as a separate prerequisite kind of activity and prepare that document, get it signed from the business and then start implementing in DG.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. My only concern is that on the right side, under the ERP, the circle, to find out in the brownfield implementation, what are the rules already existing in the ERP, let's say in finance, I have no idea. So I would depend on a finance consultant.
Exactly. So in projects, what happens is, let's say for example, this is your SAP system. So I'll say this is your all that whatever this. So let me put it like this. This is the ERP layer, the existing one. Okay. Now when you activate MDG, let's say for example, this is your MDG component. That means on the same system, you have MDG related functionalities. Now ERP related. So in all the existing as is process, business users are creating the master data here. MM01 is a ticker. Now in MDG, as part of this MDG, we will actually log this transaction and we enable MDG UI application where user has to log into this MDG and he can create the master data. So this is kind of replacement for this one. Okay, this is fine. Now here already in most of the projects, SD, MM or FI consultants will be there. Okay, who actually supports not only this master data, your transactional processes also. So these folks should be aware of what are the existing rules and checks and all that derivations, everything, what are the existing configurations are there. They should be aware of that one. So we can actually, after this, these people, then MDG consultant will come into picture. So the next immediate point of contact is these folks, because ultimately these people will be using the data and they will be doing the transactional set configurations, right? So they should aware of what is there in the system, existing system.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Is this a separate license that we need to procure for this MDG one or?
That's a
Okay.
good question. Actually, so what happens is you are on, let's say for example, ECC version, not on S4 version. ECC also you have this ERP. Okay. Now ERP means like your logistics execution, SDMM modules are there in ECC version. In this system, okay, so it's basically optional to enable MDG, because here customers are already using MM01 and all that stuff to create the master data, right? Now, once you activate this MDG, then you can use this layer to create your master data. So in this layer, you have a lot of the workflows, UI applications, lot of all MDG features are there, mass capabilities, or replicating or receiving the data, all the features are there in MDG. Okay. Now earlier, since it's optional, if customer wants to take it, they need to take a separate license for MDG and get it enabled, activate that and start using this MDG. This is from the ECC side of story. So where MDG comes as at the cost of additional amount, right? Now with S4, what happened is with S4 system, okay, so your ERP and MDG also includes it as part of your S4 license. Okay, so you don't need to again take the separate license for MDG. It comes, SAP started providing, it includes the cost in your S4 cost itself. They already included it. So then it's up to you whether you use it or not. But in most of the cases, SAP made it mandatory to use this one. Like they're giving some time, especially for business partners, customers, vendors. There is no other option. You have to go with MDG only. But for materials and finance related objects, so the thing is, SAP you have some option, but ultimately you need to enable, activate MDG for those objects as well. Okay. So in S4, it already included, right? So that's where actually anyway it's already included. So people started enabling MDG as part of their S4 journey. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. It makes sense. Yeah.
One question from me. Okay. Is there a different version of MDG Cloud versus MDG On-Prem, or is it the same in your experience?
No, until it's the futures, everything same. It's just a matter of like whether it is a cloud version or on-prem version. That's it. The futures, the concept, there is no difference at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, fine.
So, quick question.
Yeah, please.
Did you log into your MDG system also?
So this is your MDG system only. So MDG system is nothing but you take any SAP using system, that means your ERP system where your ERP resides. Take any SAP system where your ERP resides. ERP means like you should have already all your logistics general, all your SD, whatever those components are there, right? Your logistics general, this should be there. Okay.
So here, right? This was another question I had.
Yeah.
Is there an MDG like a section right here?
Yes, it is there. Okay. So MDG is also the MDG related configurations also exist in your SPR only. Okay. So you can see your cross application components. You expand your cross application component. Here there will be, you will have master data.
See one that says master data synchronization?
No, not synchronization. No, this is not under cross application component. Wait a minute. Yep. So usually we use a shortcut T code. We don't go through this long way. So under cross application component, you have something called processes and tools. So once you expand this, here you will have master data.
Oh, I see it. Master data governance.
Yeah. So this node, all our MDG, our entire course, we will be discussing under this one. Under this.
So you're going to train us on all of this, right?
Yeah. So under this master data governance, we'll have, there is something called central governance. This is MDG and this is consolidation. Also covers under this consolidation itself. So this is MDG configuration.
Great. So kind of relate to this. So let's say we have an S4 system. Within that itself, when we are at MDG, right? You're saying the person who's the MDG team creates the material, for example. He uses MM01 and he has his business logic and rules and all that. He's going to ship for that. And then it's going to go to another person, maybe in sales team, so that they can update or validate what's pertaining to them. Will they also log in the same system? They will, right?
Yeah, it's the same system. They also has to log into the same system, but it is not this kind of GUI screens. It's a browser-based applications. So
Browser.
basically,
Okay.
there will be an URL hyperlink. Okay, so let me just show you quickly
Yeah.
so that you can visualize that how the MDG
Correct.
the related UI applications look like. Okay.
Yeah. Because basically what I'm used to, right, is in the past projects, we'll usually go through, like, let's say I'm working through Wing School, right? I
Yeah.
have Excel file, I maintain all the data I need, I run the script, it goes and creates 100 materials.
Yep.
And then usually we send that same Excel file to the sales team and say, hey, these are columns 4, 5, 6, which is sales related. Can you put your data and run the script from within the file?
All that is
So
not
that runs it,
required
no?
here. Yeah, so that all that effort will be reduced, and you can
Correct.
follow a simple approach over here. You have a bulk creation. You can directly upload your Excel in MDG. That I say with that Excel, it will create those data, and in the workflow, it will go to the next person. He can review, and then it goes. So you don't need to do a manual communication, a kind of thing. It's a fully automated. You can set up
And
a
then they get an email,
which is fully automated.
and will the user get an email with the link
Yes,
to
yes.
access
So in
and
this
more?
process, we can configure that emails, everything you can do. So notifications to the customers, other users, and everyone. Okay. Now, if you look at this one, this is one of the homepage. This homepage is for material governance. Okay. Here you will have some such material application. When I click on this link, it will take me to a material search application. Okay. So here I can search the materials based on different parameters. Okay. So you don't have this kind of applications in your regular UI screens. So you have an based on all these different parameters, you can search your materials, which will give you the result. Okay. So once you click on search, you will get the data over here. Okay. So basically we call this as a one-stop for all kind of requirements. So from the search application, once you find your relevant data, well and good, you can select that record and you can edit that record. Or else from here itself, you can create a new record, or you can copy existing record and create a new. You can perform mass change. You can perform some, this is also mass operations. You can replicate the data to distribute the data to different target systems. So everything you can do from this particular screen. Otherwise, you also have the home page direct links where you can create the material, where you can change the material. You can perform all the operations on your master data. Then this section talks about how you can perform a mass operations on your master data. And this section provides like some kind of the what do you call that work center. So if as an approver, what are the requests are pending with me for my approver, or what are the requests that I submitted? What is the status of those requests? So this is a kind of your inbox. So every user can log in and they can check, are there any items for him? So though we can set up that mail notifications and everything.
What sets ZaranTech apart in SAP corporate training? It's our unique blend of expertise and innovation. We offer customized courses tailored to each client's needs, ensuring relevant, targeted learning. Our vast trainer database brings you wisdom from the best in the field. Need resources? Access our extensive training material repository anytime. We are all about measurable results, providing detailed student metrics to track progress. And we don't just teach, we build community. Join our thriving social media network, connecting learners beyond boundaries. With ZaranTech, you are not just training, you are transforming your SAP expertise.
But this is the kind of work center for each user. He can come and log in and can review and take actions on here. Okay. Then you also have some kind of reporting. How many materials created on time? Does it meet SLA? So all those kind of reporting you can generate from here. And this talks about integration of your MDG system with the different source systems and target systems. And this talks about loading the data into MDG system. Okay, so pretty much you can do all the material related operations over here. Depends on the roles. Some of the links will be enabled. Some of the links the other user may not see. Okay, so similarly, if I go to the customer master or business partner, the UI look like same more. Okay, so if you, that's what we talked about, the consistency feature, right? So that means if you, this is a business partner governance page. So when I click on this, here also you'll have the same kind of activities, search applications, your mass applications, and your work center related activities, your reporting related activities in the down replication and load. So the sections are same. Like similarly, you have something called governance, customer governance. So here also you'll have such applications And so the theme UI look like same, everything for every master data.
Sorry, I have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
Let's say material itself, right? Let's take an example of material master.
Mhm.
So if I initiate the creation, and I know it's still not completely done, all the views are not updated, will it put the material in the status like cannot be used until the whole thing is done?
In MDG, what happens is that material will be inactive state until the final approver approves. Till then, that will be in an inactive state. So that's how actually how MDG separates your working records versus the active records. That means, let's take for example, this is your SAP system, okay, and this is your ERP layer, okay, and this is your MDG layer, okay. Now in your ERP layer, you have the backend database tables, right?
Right.
So you use MM01 to create a material and click the save button, so the data comes over here. That means whatever the data materials or customers or whatever the data is there in these tables, respective tables, these are the active records. This can be used for your transactional purpose. Some of the examples are like your Mara table, which stores your material data. So whatever the data materials are there in this system, that data I can use it for my transactional activities. I can create a sales order, purchase order, use these materials for purchase order or any processes. Or customers, I can create sales orders for those customers. So everything. That means this is pretty much your active area or the active records. But whatever the request that a user logged into MDG and he submitted the data, it went to some approver, right? So this data gets, SAP has a separate MDG comes up with a separate kind of tables. So these tables, we call it as a staging tables. Staging tables are temporary area tables. So whatever the data I create initially, that data gets sit into this particular table. Now this, we consider it as my inactive records. Inactive records, which are not supposed to use for any transaction activities. Your sales order always refers your Mara table, not the staging table. The sales order process doesn't aware of this in this process, these tables. They will take the reference of this one. Okay. So till when the data sits into this table, until the final approver approves. So once the final approver approves, that is the time this data actually move from your staging table to your active area table, and it will move from your staging table to active area table. And now this record will become active. That process we call it as an activation process. Okay. So you have a separate clear cut separation between your inactive records get stored into the inactive record means the record which is working record. Someone is doing changes. So that is not visible to your any transactional site. Okay. So that the records will move only when the final approver approves. Only during that time, the record will actually move from your staging table to active area, and the record will get deleted from your staging table. It's already done active and it can be used. There is no point in keeping the data in my staging table. So it's a kind of temporary area. We call it as a temporary area where the record will be there until the final approver approves. In between, someone wants to cancel or terminate this record creation process, they can choose, and the data will get deleted from the staging table and nothing will move to your active area. So that's how you can separate both your temporary area and active area.
Great. Last question here. So let's say I'm one of the end users who's creating sales orders, all that, right? So if I basically just go and search for material that actually is still in MDG, in inactive table, it won't show it up to them, right? Because it's not active, they won't be able to see that.
Okay. Now, yeah. So for if you open your sales order screen, okay, and if you try to search a material, that record won't show because that record is not there in your active area. That means in your Mara table or standard SAP application specific tables, that records are not there. So your sales order or purchase order will search the materials which exist in those tables only. Okay. But the records that are there in your staging area, which are in progress, it won't show up there. But when I open my MDG application, you see, this is my search material. When I open my MDG application, when I try to click on search, okay, so it will fetch both the records from my active area and my staging area. Now you see here, there is a clear-cut indication. This symbol tells you that this record is in progress. Okay, and there are some records which are not. These are the active records. These records are coming from my active area. So it's because in my MDG UI, I need to provide that visibility of what is in progress and what is active records. But that doesn't mean that this record you can use it in your transactional activities. Okay, great. Okay, any other questions?
Hey, if for example, if I switch on this MDG process, is it still possible we can go ahead and create 01 in S4 actual layer?
Yeah, technically this is possible. Okay, but as an MDG, we consultant, we always strongly recommend not to go with that. Which means, okay, so this is my SAP system and this is my ERP layer, and here I use M01 for material creation. Okay, now as soon as I activate MDG in my system, so MDG also provides UI to create your material, right? So in this case, see what happens is, in this case, we always lock down this transaction. We recommend the security team to lock down. We don't give this access to any user. At max, we provide MM03, only the display authorization, not for any creation or change one. Okay, if you okay, and we allow the users to use MDG for all your master data creation and change process, because you cannot have two sources. MDG is the one source of truth for all your master data activities. Okay, so what happens in MDG? We talked about a different kind of like DQ, data quality. You configure your business rules here, and we configure your checks and everything here, the derivations here. Okay, as part of MDG. So all my business rules are configured here. If I create a material using MM01, it doesn't look up into this one. Okay, it will just whatever is there in your MM0 UI. So those checks it will perform, and it will simply create the data in my system. That means the materials that got created through this process is not through the governance process. Okay, this is a kind of backdoor entry. We are skipping the governance process and we are creating the material directly in the system. This will lead to your data inconsistency. Okay, so that's why we strongly recommend not to create materials through through ERP, and always use MDG UI applications for your master data, because this is where it follows whatever the data you create through this process, that follows the governance process. When I say governance process, all your reviews, validations, derivations, checks, duplicate checks, everything will be done through this process, and the record that is coming out of my MDG process, I will consider it as a good record. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Great.
And is there any certification prescribed by SAP for this?
Yeah, MDG certification is there from SAP. Okay, so whatever the course that we are going to cover as part of this course, so that based on those concepts, you can actually give that attempt to the certification. Okay, because this was designed in such a way that it covers all the MDG topics. We are not leaving any single topic out of this course. We cover MDG. Your MDG certification basically covers 3 topics: MDG, MDC, consolidation, DQM. So we'll be covering each and everything, and you can go and give a certification. Also, you can go for a certification as well after this. Any other questions? Okay.
So if at all we take the certification route, is there anything specific you want to be, addressing to help with that? Is there any material?
They will be providing all the materials related to the certification, and I also have some my own collection, which are the previously asked the questions from the certification. So we'll go through those questions. So once we complete the 70 to 80% of the course, then if I open up those questions, and when I start discussing, by reading those questions, you will be able to relate that. Okay, so these are covered. Okay, it comes under this UI topic. This covers in data model. We discuss these points. So that's where you will.
Thank you.
One question that is how well this solution can integrate with other ERP. Let's say, for instance, if I'm running few processes on SAP and few are on different systems and also custom applications, what kind of provision does SAP MDG offers to integrate with the diverse solutions?
Okay. So as one of the feature that we discussed here is the integration, right? So basically, when you are creating your master data through SAP MDG, okay, so it can connect to any systems for any further kind of, I would say, further enrichments. When I say, let's say, for example, there is something called DNB, Duns and Bradstreet. Okay, most of the customers use this Duns and Bradstreet integration to get the DUNS numbers for the customers, so that they can keep reference of the DUNS number in the as part of your customer record, so that they can use that for the future, right? So when I'm creating in the customer in my MDG system, in the backend, it should automatically go and get, based on this data, what is the relevant DUNS ID for this customer, and just populate in my customer record. Okay, so that is one. I'm just telling the common kind of requirements or integrations. There is something called address enrichments. Okay, so that means there are some third party address kind of, let's say when you enter some customer address, let's say you entered some area, then it automatically go and provide you the valid possible addresses in that particular with that matching. So you need to exactly pinpoint, okay, you are giving some building number, then it automatically proposes which floor, first floor, second floor, third floor, what is that kind of thing, detailed one, right? So those kind of detailed address, if at all you wanted to maintain for a customer record, then you can connect to this address solutions, right? And address services basically. And there is something called say vertex system is also there. When someone is entering customer data, I wanted to derive that tax jurisdiction code based on the customer address. So that's where also you can integrate with the vertex. Okay, so likewise, these are some of the examples, right? And when you are creating your master data, maybe not this, you have some third party solution, you wanted to connect, integrate to that particular third party solution and fetch some details from that while you are on fly itself when you are creating the data, right? So MDG has framework, multiple ways to integrate into all these kind of third party solutions. And some cases these are when you're creating your master data, you wanted to further enrich your master data through some external derivations. By integrating with external systems, you wanted to get the data, okay? Because these are the valid trusted sources where you can derive the data and keep store in your master data record. Okay, so this is one, these are the some of the examples where you can integrate with some third party solutions to enrich your data. And another type of examples I just mentioned, like your master data gets created in some source system with non-SAP specific attributes. That means in the source system, for the materials, they might be having product category, some product type, which are not SAP terminology. Okay, but you wanted to get the data into your SAP system. And when you receive this data based on these attributes, you wanted to derive SAP specific attributes, like what material type, what material group, and all that one. So this is maybe the business specific master data view. But when it comes to SAP that record, those attributes are not part of SAP standard attributes, right? You need to derive standard SAP attributes. So based on this data, you will derive and you create one standardized material record in your SAP MDG system, right? So, and one type of category is where you can further enrich your master data. Here also integration come into picture. And to receive the data from different source systems, this is also another type of integration. And the third type of integration is where you wanted to replicate the data to respective target systems, distribute that one. Because in the landscape, it's not only this system, right? You might be having one SRM system, one CRM system, and maybe some third party non-SAP systems as well. So this data has to be distributed to those respective systems where the transactional activities are happening, right? So this is also third type of integration come into picture. So MDG supports all the different type of integrations. Does it answer your question?
It does. It does. I'm also thinking, again, now everybody's talking about AI, right? Does SAP has any AI module which can bring in the agents concept here? Does it happen? Any idea?
Which concept? Can you repeat that?
Agentic AI.
AI you are talking about?
Agentic AI. SAP has any? I mean, I heard there's a solution called Jurail or some solution there where they're offering their AI capabilities, right? So is there any AI component to this?
So in DQM, it has AI in DQM. So as we are talking about three components in MDG, right? One is the data quality management. So in the DQM, what happens is there are two ways where you can create the business rules. The other to run your DQM processes to identify good records and bad records. The other is where it has something called rule mining concept, where it uses that AI. That what happens is instead of you create the rule, that you actually enable run one application that will go through all your records, existing records, and it will prepare certain rules for you. Okay, based on this data analysis, these are the rules. Okay, now it will give you a proposal to you. Now out of those rules, you can accept some and you can decline some rules. Okay, so that is a one place where AI capability is used.
Interesting.
Okay, we'll see. I'll show you that we have during the DQM topic.
Hey, I have one more question.
Yes.
As you said, the master data will be replicated to the subsequent SAP or non-SAP systems like CRM or something like that. So the actual data replication will happen from S4 layer or from the MDG layer, because
it depends on where your active record resides. Okay, as of now, you can assume it will replicate the data from this area, your application area. Okay, for now. Okay, because this database, we call it as your active area. All your active record resides here. So the replication happens from here to your target systems. Okay, so there are some cases where your active records resides here. That will be a separate topic that we will discuss during our MDG course, but that's fine. So for now, you can assume the data. See, ultimately MDG we use for your master data creation process or change process, but ultimately where your master data sits, it reuses the existing application specific tables only, like your MARA, MARCI, MBW, MVKE, or KNA1, but 000. All these are your application specific tables, right? Which are there before MDG as well. So ultimately, those are the source for your master data. Okay, so from there only it will take the data and it will replicate. Okay.
Okay. And will this MDG be used for this project systems related master data?
Projects, you tell me, is there any masters, some of the masters in project systems which you are talking? So what happens is, now if you look at, there is a one slide, just a minute. All these we already discussed. Okay. Now this is a one slide where you can look at, these are the out of box objects. Out of box object means basically you can see in finance area, it covers these objects like GL account, cost element, then you have finance reporting structure, cost centers, profit centers, internal orders, company codes. So these are the master data in finance area. Okay, in material master, there's a material object, you know, and in a business partner, you have supplier, customer, and business partner. Okay, in EM solution, it covers equipment, functional location, bill of materials, these objects. In RFM, article master. So these are the out of box objects in MDG. That means, let me finish. So that means these are the objects that comes as from SAP. When I say out of objects, that means if you look at this application, so SAP provided everything for you from material master point of view. They provided all these UI applications and everything. You need to just do little bit of configuration and start using. Okay, the backend staging tables, everything is ready. Okay, similarly for customer master, you can see for customer master, business partner, everything is there. But there are some objects for which, like employee master, those are SAP not delivered, because SAP focus is to focus on the MDG framework and the most commonly used objects. But when it comes to other objects, like let's say, for example, WBS element or probably customer employee master, maybe not all the customers are using those. In that case, it's up to customer to enable that master data in MDG. So that means there is a little bit of development required over there to bring those objects into MDG. But that is also supported by MDG. Okay, so either it supports the standard out of box objects, and also you can bring any objects which are not part of this list into MDG scope. So there will be some development effort will be there. Okay.
Will we get a copy of your presentation and recording?
With I think support will be hearing only this one. Okay, but whatever the once we start that course, so basically you will be getting all the documents, all the PPTs I'm going to use for this complete course.
Yeah, but I mean this demo that you're giving, right? The one you're showing us now.
I'm going to check with the support team. Let's check with the support team.
Okay. And then if we have questions right after this, how do we get in touch?
Reach out support team. So basically what happens is they will set up a call with me. They'll take my time, and then accordingly they'll schedule a call and we can further discuss. If you have any further doubts on this course, if you wanted to get few more details.
Okay, and one last question. I got asked this question in an interview last week. What are the shortcomings of MDG, and what are the other competitive products, the MDM products in the market that have better functionality that we don't have in MDG?
Okay, so first thing is, earlier before MDG in the market, MDM is there. Okay, so master data management. Whatever the MDG features that we are discussing, most common features are already part of this MDM. Okay, now after that SAP introduced MDG. Okay, now here the point, there might be some third party solutions are there which I heard here and there a few customers are using. But if you take out of probably 10 customers, then mostly 8 to 9 customers are going with MDG only. Okay. Here the important point is, if you are on SAP system, let's say this is your SAP system, and you are using this SAP system for your transactional processes. Okay. When I say transactional process, it can be your SD processes or finance processes or probably procurement related processes. Okay. So if you are using SAP for your transactional activities, it is always like which solution, like MDG has a native integration. The advantage when you go with MDG, it has a native integration. When I say native integration, whatever the underlying SAP, the features are there. Like, I mean, earlier we are creating MM01, we are using to create the master data. You are doing all the configurations in SPRO with related to MM01. Okay. Now the same configurations will be reused by MDG. Okay. You no need to again build anything separately here. Only the governance related aspects you can build. From the application point of view, your authorizations. So in MM offers some authorizations. So all the authorizations will be reused in MDG. Okay. If you have an authorization to create a material using MM01, you will also have the same authorization to create the material using MDG. So in the backend, MDG uses your SPRO and your underlying ERP configurations from the application standpoint. What additional MDG offers is like whatever we discussed, right? Like the applications, the workflows and all those things MDG offers additionally, right? So now if you are not going with MDG and if you take some MDM thing, most of your effort will go into integrating this one, because this is not an MDM SAP one, right? So the underlying is not SAP or ABAP. Whereas here the advantage you get is MDG. So that's the reason most of the customers who are on SAP side, they always prefer MDG, because that comes as part of as part of your license itself, as for license, and it has a native integration, because the underlying most of the things will be reused. If you are going with MDM or any third-party solution, you need to set up the separate authorizations here and separate authorizations here, right? So there will be more time will be going on integrating or syncing both the systems and all that stuff. Whereas in MDG, if I create a new material type in SPRO, the same material type I can also use through MDG. Okay, so those are the lot of advantages are there when you go with MDG. So that's where most of the customers are preferring MDG. Now, can I use MDG on any Oracle or anything? No, you cannot use. For the prerequisite is the underlying you should have an SAP ERP solution. Only on top of SAP ERP system, you can install MDG. So MDG you cannot use for other applications like Oracle or anywhere, but MDM can be used as a master data for SAP, but there is a lot of synchronization or integration effort going to that space.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm hearing of this Palantir Master Data Governance solution. That's something which is widely being used. I don't know. Your point is right. Integrating with SAP could be, I don't know how easy it is, but Palantir is something which I'm hearing a lot these days on almost everything.
Yeah. So it all depends on what is your transactional system, where your transactional process are happening. If it is in SAP, it makes sense to go for MDG. If you are using some Oracle or some other ERP applications, then MDG is not a recommended approach. Okay. Yep. So yeah, I think so. These whatever that other topics that are mentioned over here, like your typical mass processes and everything, are all these of them are the kind of topics for us in our course. So we will each and everything. So at a very high level is a complete list of course from MDG standpoint. Yeah, this is the place. Okay. So not this one as well. We'll be discussing each of these processes in detail. So yeah, this is what I'm talking. So these are the high level topics that in MDG. So we will be discussing each of these topics as part of this particular training. Basically, it covers each and everything. We are not leaving any topic in MDG or MDC or DQM.